in my bag. So soft and so tender. Daddy in the kitchen and he told me, son, listen. He said, you don't have to play the part that they wrote for you. You don't have to play.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rich Robbins. Welcome to tonight's episode of Soft and Tender, where each week we explore Black fatherhood through conversations between the sons that they've raised. Our goal is to highlight the unique and universal aspects of love within Black families, showcasing how our fathers express love and care despite societal challenges, along with broadening our understanding of what fatherhood means and how that meaning can evolve. Before we dive into this week's conversation, let me introduce our guests. To my direct right, we've got D or D2X, recording artist and rapper. To my far right, we've got Julian Davis Reid, artist, theologian, and father. I got that right, theologian. Thank you, audience and father. And to my direct left, we've got Julian Champion, Chief Executive Officer at West Point School of Music and father. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us for episode 10 of Soft and Tender, our season finale, if you will. It is an honor to be in conversation with the three of you, and thank you for your time today. We're gonna start off by just letting the audience know a little bit about our own backgrounds, right? Who was your primary father figure growing up, and where they from? Could give us a name if you want, but just a little information about them. Julian, we'll start off with you.
Didn't have one.
Heard. Any father figures at all that stood out to you in life?
No.
Interesting. We'll unpack that because I know your son, so that we'll unpack how that relationship came to be and still is and still flourishes. We'll bounce it over to the other Julian. Hello.
What's up? My dad is attorney Norman Neville Reid, and he is an incredible father. He's from Milwaukee. His parents are from Jamaica, and he's one of 6 children and has been married for 30-something years to my mom, Reverend Adonna Davis Reid, and I'm the eldest of 5.
Ah, okay. Older brother. Yeah. I am also the oldest brother, yes.
Respect
nice.
mine.
Yeah, yes. D, how about you?
I'll definitely want to just say, like, as far as father figures, I'll give a shout out to my mom and my dad. Definitely, we grew up, I grew up separately with my parents. I grew up with my mom. But, I definitely want to commend my dad for doing everything that he was able to do as well. So I want to say shout out to my mom and my father.
Absolutely. Shout out to both parents for filling in these roles. Yeah, absolutely. So today's episode is all grounded in forgiveness, all right? Which should be a pretty heavy topic for anybody, let alone the Black community as well, right? I want to just start off by this quote by Reinhold Niebuhr: "Forgiveness is the final form of love." Right. I would like to just hear a little bit about how you have learned about strength and vulnerability of forgiveness from some of the Black men in your life. Julian, we can start off with you with that question, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So 2 people come to mind. First, my dad. I remember there was a time a couple of years ago as I was in my 20s, starting to really get my sea legs under me as a young professional. And my dad has always been keen to help all of us try to tune in to what it is God had given us by way of vocation and direction. And I was doing this. I was moving about and trying to figure out how to hold together different interests of mine. And I remember just how often we'd be on the phone and his immediate questions were interrogating the extent to which I was moving in a direction with real clarity. And at some point I got a little frustrated because it seemed like I was never moving with enough velocity. And I remember my dad saying, "I'm sorry if you feel something less than I want you to." And that moment has always stood out to me because he didn't apologize for being focused on trying to help me move towards dreams, towards a vision professionally. But he did want to apologize for making me feel as if I couldn't talk to him about it or I was feeling overly or needlessly frustrated. So that was one example. And that conversation and the immediacy of his apology has always stood out to me. And I was able to forgive him. And it's been amazing ever since. Another father figure is also like a big brother figure was this campus minister. I was doing campus ministry a few years ago, and I was getting hot and bothered with with the person over me. His name is Josh, Pastor Josh, and I'll never forget funnily enough, we were in a music practice room, so it kind of speaks even to the practice of forgiveness. But I'll never forget, I made a comment about how frustrated I was with how he was doing something or other. And this brother, who's years older than me, got down on his knees and apologized.
Wow.
I will never forget just his physical posture and what that signaled to me about what black masculine vulnerability could look like. Between those two moments, between my dad and also Pastor Josh, I've really been shaped and molded in my ability to seek forgiveness and to also apologize.
Wow, those are incredible stories. Thank you for sharing those. I definitely relate to having moments where my parents apologize and that those being life-changing moments, you know. And I don't know if they planned on that being so pivotal in my life, you know. But I got into a physical altercation with my father when I was about 18, and you know, blood was shed and things were thrown out of the house, and I lived out of the house for about 2 weeks, and I think it was his way when he reached back out through email, because they had cut off my phone at the time. Both of my parents had reached out through email and to say, you know, son, come home. And when I did, the embrace that I was met with, even though I was equally, if not a little bit more, at fault for what had happened, you know. Ever since that moment, my father has always kissed me on the cheek when he sees me, whether it's in public, whether it's in private. That was his way of apologizing, on top of actually apologizing, you know. To see somebody who is almost like invincible to you humble themselves physically and emotionally like that is pretty, it is life-changing. It is life-changing, especially as black men. Julian, I would love to hear from you as well. What have you learned about the strength of forgiveness or vulnerability from the men in your life?
I'm just still thinking about the word forgiveness as it applies to fatherhood. And I think it's, in my case, where my father was not instrumental in raising me, there are just practical implications of that absence that even if I say, I forgive you, I don't think, nothing changes for me. Right? But by that I mean, so fatherhood is a covenant. Right? You have a child and you invest in this child and you impart into this child. You equip this being and send them into adulthood with as many skills as you can, practical, psychological, emotional. And then this kid makes their way through the world, and then at the end of your life as a father, you have to then look to that child to help you exit. If you don't keep your part of the covenant, right? These 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds with children who are still, I'm just enjoying my life. You know, my brother's father, we don't have the same father, my brother's father told my mother, I'm too young for this. And he left. But then what happens, these guys have a tendency of circling back when they are old and you are in your life and trying to put it together. And then saying things like, forgive me. And by that they mean, let's just let it all be gone. And now you invest in me. The problem with that is, and then some of us we're falling prey to that, right? We're falling victim to that. Well, you know, my old man reached out, my pops reached out and asked me to forgive him. So, you know, now I'm going to take money from my pocket that I should be using on my wife and my children to build my house, and I'm now going to share it with you. I'm sorry, I can't do it. Because remember, I don't have the capacity to be the son you think I should be because you were not the father that you should have been.
Right.
I'm sorry. So I'm gonna leave that there.
Well, and I think that that's a really good distinction between forgiveness and forgetting, right? Forgiveness does not mean that you forget anything, but forgiveness does come with a certain amount of closure that maybe you don't have the capacity to close that particular close and heal from those particular wounds, right? Some scars are just left. That's what
I wouldn't even say that it's scars, right? Because in my case, I'm really not scarred. I'm really not. My father was not there for me. And I met my father, I was 13 years old. That was the first time I met my father. And he blew into my life. And I thought I was going to have a father. And he blew out just like he blew in. And then he blew in again and he blew out. And that was it. Now he's in a position where he can't really see about himself and make decisions for himself. And, I've had family members call me, well, do you want to do this for your father? I say, no, I don't have any grudges, but I'm a father myself. I have obligations to my 5 children and to my mother, who had to do everything, and I have to save myself. And I think a lot of us get in problems like that. We overextend ourselves, and then we become frustrated.
Hi, I'm Darius Hillman, inviting you to join me for the series finale of In the Arena, where we'll relive some of the conversations and experience the people who help make In the Arena the place for elevated conversation and shared community. I promise you, it's a journey down memory lane well worth taking together. Join the conversation Tuesday at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
I'm in my bag. So soft and so tender.
I want you to get in on this, man. To talk about a little bit about your journey of forgiveness, and as that pertains to the context of your relationship with pops or father figures.
For me, I think with my upbringing, it was a little bit of a kind of like roller coaster situation with me and my dad. Even dating back to like when I was a kid, my dad and my mom were together for like a short period of time. So by the time I was like 3 years old, they were already separated and, going through a divorce phase. So growing up, we stayed in Marquette Park on the south side at the time. My grandmother had a family building where a lot of us stayed in. And during that time period, it was just my mom taking care of me and my 3 older sisters. Then moving, when I got 6, we moved to the south suburbs. Still, my mom being around and taking care of me. Every like summer camp when I got into sports, every event, even getting a little older, from AAU tournaments to traveling to doing every little thing, it was usually most of the time my mom being involved. And the thing is, like going back to my dad, that one thing that I can say is I always commend him for being, definitely a great person. He always, gave love to me and we always communicated. But I feel like the one thing that kind of hindered our relationship, throughout my childhood was the amount of time that we never really had. At most, I probably saw my dad maybe twice in a year. It was never no more than that. The average was 1 or 2 times a year. So if you could, calculate that, now I'm 26 years old, it's probably even less than most people could, that I knew, like growing up, who had their fathers, and, it's nowhere near the amount, that I wanted. So that used to bother me a lot, even up until, now. But one thing that I can say, going back to forgiveness, is it took a lot of bravery out of me to finally like have that conversation with him of why I felt like, every time I got a chance to talk to him, I was always happy, but it was always that feeling in me that was kind of holding that grudge, and not even anger, but more so like it was a restraint to how how often and how motivated I was to even want to reach out to him or talk to him or even, be like kind of excited about it. So it's like every time we talked, it was amazing. Like I was happy. I'm like, I get a chance to talk to my dad. But then we can have that conversation, and then it could literally be the next time we talk would be maybe like 6 months later. And this is even me now. Something that I'm still trying to work on is trying to consistently talk to him. Now that he's a little older, my dad is 67 now. So I've, went back, talked to him. We sat down a few months ago. We went out for breakfast, and I finally just got a chance to tell him like the things that was always bothering me when I was younger, and how I felt like, him keeping that end of the commitment of being a father is something that I feel like, that's very important. But it also just told me like I'm just trying to forgive and want him to know and understand that I forgive him. And I just, basically what I'm trying to say is like, I just try to use the things that my dad maybe lacked and not hold it against him now versus when I was younger, and just apply those things that he lacked and it was missing with, taking on the commitment of being a father, and for me to like add those things to my life when I have my own child. And, I think now, I don't hold it against him anymore. I'm still excited to talk to him, but the habits and the flow of us communicating is still kind of the same.
Yeah, but
through all those years. So.
I mean, man, I commend you and respect you though for the grace that's in your heart, and how much room you still leave for somebody that didn't make a lot of room for you. And it's a very difficult thing to do. And as I'm listening to this, I'm reminded at how much power it takes to even give forgiveness to somebody, and to gift somebody with your forgiveness. All of you have fatherhood experience, right? How do you approach forgiveness? I'm getting a good understanding of how you've received or have not received forgiveness, but as fathers or father figures, how do you provide forgiveness if you haven't necessarily received that or been taught that? Julian, I'd love to hear from you as a dad. How are you extending forgiveness to your child?
Yeah, it was deep because she's almost 7 months, so she's really young, and so you
got to forgive her for that lack of sleep.
The extent to which she has any kind of willpower in what she's doing makes it hard to have that kind of conversation. Although there is this one time that I feel comfortable sharing where I needed to ask her for the hypothetical forgiveness she could have extended. Man, I was tired. And Brother Julian, having been a new father at one point, just what it means to have those nights, those first couple months when you're not really sleeping and they're just up all the time. And I was next to the bassinet. She was crying. I was like, and I'm halfway up, right? So I'm kind of delirious. But in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I can just pick her up with one hand while I'm staying in bed and then pull her up and then somehow magically bring her into my arms in the bed. She was too heavy, or she moved, or I just wasn't really thinking at 2 a.m. And she was not far from the ground, but I dropped her. And my wife is a pediatrician, so I told her about this and she checked, and developmentally, Lydia's fine. Yeah. So I'm thankful for that. But man, did I think about that for days afterwards. I just rehearsed the fact. I remember how her face looked. I remember how I felt. Having my daughter fall from my hands. And again, we're talking inches from the bottom of this soft bassinet. So thankfully there was no injury. But man, did I have to forgive myself. But then also extend forgiveness and say, Lydia, I'm sorry. And also use that as a moment to begin practicing the muscle of saying, I'm sorry, Lydia. Because I know I'm gonna have to rehearse that throughout her life. And I come into fatherhood with a deep desire to be the best I can, but I know I will fall short of the glory of God. And so I go to her and say sorry. I've also gone many a time to Carmen and said sorry. And when in the introduction, when talking about my dad, one of the reasons I mentioned the fact he's been married for 30-something years is because his fathering, a la D's, his fathering has always been in connection to the parenting that my mom has done. So I know your situation is different, so I don't want to make false equivalence. But when you said that you had to give it up to both your parents for how you were raised, that resonated with me. And in my case, part of how I've been raised by my dad is by how he has been a husband to my mom.
Right, okay.
And so that also then very much grounds the way that I go about fathering. That to reach into fathering is to always, therefore, for me, reach into being a husband. And to reach into being a husband is always reaching into being a father now that Lydia's here. And so there's this beautiful symbiosis that's happening between Carmen, my wife, Lydia, and myself. And that therefore extends to forgiveness, because when there's a crack in the relationship with Lydia, like when I dropped her in the bassinet, that's going to affect Carmen in some way.
Yeah.
And vice versa, if we have tension, that's going to affect Lydia. Or if Carmen, or when Carmen at some point will have tension with Lydia, that's going to affect us. So the circle is all connected.
On the next Hustle, Play, Love, I'll be joined by Chicago entrepreneur, author, venture capitalist, and craft distiller Dee Robinson. And a planner of exquisite events and a Coast Guard captain will give you the scoop on how to enjoy boat season on Lake Michigan this summer. Join the conversation Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. on CanTV Cable Channel 19, or stream live on cantv.org or on the CanTV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
I'm in my bag. So soft and so tender.
And I would include in this that symbiosis as well. You being a son is also activated in those moments, right? And learning from those moments of your father's relationship with your mother. That is all playing a role in this cycle of interaction with your daughter. Julian, I would love to hear from you too about how you approach forgiveness with your children.
Well, the relationship is everything. You are not a father if you have a baby and don't raise them. It's just simple. And it's time we start calling it what it is. You're a sperm donor, you're a contributor to a really historic event, you are a bystander in the halls of history, but you are not a father. So the conversations around forgiveness between a sperm donor and his seed is very different as opposed to the relationship between a present father. I was looking at pictures the other day, and every picture of my children, I'm in the picture. One day my son, you know him, he told me, he said, I'm talking to guys and they don't know who their father is or their fathers are. He said, I was listening to my friends and I said, I have too much father. Too much, I have too much father, too much. And I mean, I was laughing, but it's exactly, so now when you have that really kind of relationship and you need to forgive, well, there's a lot there, right? I mean, there is a history. I was there at the baseball game. I was there for the recital. I was there. I taught you to ride a bike. I was the one who threw a ball to you. I'm the one who took care of your mother when she was sick and you saw. When your mother had surgery, I was there. There is context. So when we say forgiveness as though it's going to be hard, it's not really hard, not with that kind of history. It's hard when you have a situation like Dee, where your father did not choose, for whatever reason, he did not choose to seek you out more than twice a year. So I thought my father just didn't know or he wasn't there. He chose not to see me. A conversation about forgiveness or a conversation around forgiveness in that context is very, very different from me. I said a word to my son and he didn't like it and I hurt his feelings. That is, hey, Dad, we good? Yeah, we good. That's easy. All right.
Yeah. No, that rapport is crucial. Is crucial.
Context
for
is everything.
Dee, I want to pop this question over to you. Can you discuss the role of forgiveness and healing intergenerational trauma within Black communities? So there's a big question, right? But I think it's important for us to leave the audience with why is it it's not just a individual thing that we are doing when we are, as black men in particular, it's not an individual thing that we're doing by forgiving one another, right? There is some type of generational healing that is also happening, right? Almost like a radical kind of healing that's happening. Can you speak a little bit more on why it's so important for us to be talking about forgiveness, as a topic?
From my personal experience and the things that I've seen, like growing up, like I feel like, to be honest, conversations like these don't really even get brought up in a lot of black families. I feel like, especially from where I come from the people that I know, even family members that didn't like have dads at all. I could name numerous cousins of mine that have had like rocky relationships with their dads or didn't even have a father around at all. And I just feel like, when it comes to the topics of like having like emotional intelligence and having these small things that really matter the most, it usually just doesn't get brought up, from really in generations. Because I feel like, to be honest, I feel like a lot of people don't really have someone to even talk about things like this with. So it's just say like a kid is growing up and he doesn't have his father, or he has like a tough upbringing. He literally doesn't really have even an opportunity or a time period to even have someone to speak to about this, or it might be even two friends that's dealing with the same thing. So it's, long story short, like the idea even around that is literally just molded in like a flight or flight mode. Like I don't really even know what I'm feeling right now, but I just know how I can react to this situation. So it's just like, if I don't have my dad around, or if I don't have, even like my mother around, or whoever, like I gotta just learn how to try to take on this responsibility, or trying to become this thing that was lacking in my life. But ultimately, I feel like it's a lot of things that go missing in between, like the development of childhood and then becoming older as a teenager, that's needed from both parents, especially fathers. And I just say that to say, like, so I feel like what I've learned, and what a lot of people, we should always realize, it's like, you're not just forgiving, like you really like forgiveness is, I feel like, is kind of breaking the entire cycle. And often I could literally call one of my family members right now that dealt with similar situations. And it's just like, I feel like as time has passed and we get older, we learn that, the things that people, the people that came before us and our family generations, what they lacked, now it's more so about what can we do to kind of establish these kind of conversations for our future and our seeds. And I feel like that's what changes everything. And I feel like, forgiving our, our parents, our fathers, but also just forgiving the entire like lifetime that we were introduced to. And if we could change that, then I feel like, I would have more closure and clarity with my past, knowing that I was able to make a difference for my future kids. And that's something that I would tell those people that don't have fathers.
Good idea, man. So, good idea.
Forgiving the life that we were born into, man. It is a shame that this conversation can only be about 30 minutes long. I think that we could talk about this and need to talk about it for a lot longer. There's a lot more to unpack. Like you're saying, Dee, these conversations are very rare. But what I want to encourage the audience back at home to do is continue these conversations and understand that fatherhood is beautifully vast. It can span from biological relation to chosen family. Black fatherhood in particular is beautiful. It's had to endure generations of misunderstanding and mislabeling. We hope that this conversation shed some light and brought more insight to your own relationships back at home. Thank you for tuning into our Soft and Tender world today. You can continue the conversation with us by following us at Soft and Tender Series on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Soft and Tender. Until next time, I'm Rich Robbins. Thank you.
He said, you don't have to play the part that they wrote for you. You don't have to play the part. I'm like, how he do that twice? Why that boy so nice? Why he cuff the mic like a baby bite? So soft and tender. Bet he like that in any weather. Bet he only bite if he don't get it twisted. I be in the gym ready to box. Why would I not? Niggas out here creeping hard on the block. My pops taught me if you can't win the fight with your brain, you could definitely throw a hand.